I'll share my screen as we're letting folks in, but I was sort of a positive discipline skeptic. I don't know. I first encountered it in school. Can y'all see my screen okay? Is that big enough?
Yep.
I first encountered it as an educator, probably like you, right? Where it's like, okay, yeah, somebody's book on somebody's table. But then and I read it and I was like, it feels a little soft. Like I'm kind of a tough guy. I'm like, these children need discipline and structure and all this. And then as I re-encountered it as a parent, I realized the power of it. And it has been, at least for me, a real life saver. So we're going to talk about a couple of Becky was nice and let me do this one. So we're going to talk about my favorites. But Becky, I want you to jump in. My favorite tips from Positive Discipline. So Becky had the book, but if you don't have the book, that's okay. This is kind of your highlight. You can decide if you want to go buy it or check it out. I'm also, just a little plug, doing a Positive Discipline for Moms Summit in November. So if you're interested and want to dive deeper, you can sign up on my website. But let's get going. So we're going to talk about a bunch of things because I couldn't choose. First, we're going to talk about belonging and significance and a little bit of the theory behind positive discipline. We're going to talk about being proactive and responsive, connecting, then correcting, being kind and firm, this little strategy, I feel, because, and I wish. And if we have time, we'll talk about mistaking goals. So we got a lot to get through. So let's go ahead and start with belonging and significance. And Becky, you've read the book, this all comes from the Rudolf Dreikers and Alfred Adler's theories. And so it's not just like mumbo jumbo stuff on the internet. But I'm super curious that all behavior, the whole idea is like all behavior is movement toward belonging and significance. So when you think about that and you think about what you saw as a mother and an educator, can you speak a little towards what that looks like for you, or what you think about this whole idea?
Sure. I think, and I suspect you also know that everyone wants to be seen. Even children want to be seen. And I think that really my success in loving children for 30 years as an educator was really seeing them. And that when you are seen by others, you you get that belonging and the significance. And perhaps if you were disciplined by a disciplinarian back in the 60s or 70s, dare I say the 80s also, even though these methods had already come out, our parents really they disciplined like they had been disciplined, and it was like my way or the highway. Because I said so, just do it. Get out of here. And this belonging and significance doesn't come from those approaches. It's what I like about positive discipline because, as I always say, I believe that each person is created in the image of a holy God, and that gives them that significance. And then we pass that on, we show them. And I strongly believe that's how they will treat others.
Well, and it's funny, I see it showing up in my kids in many different ways. One concrete story that I can share, one of my children was talking about how a kid in the crumple line had lied about whether or not they had read a book. And I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, that kid was trying to belong and they were trying to have significance.
Yes.
And by shutting that kid down and saying, oh, no, you didn't read that book, right? That you're setting up this sort of clash. And so I talked to my child and I said, hey, why do you think that child said that? And so, what I also like about positive discipline, we talked about, I actually shared with them, I said, hey, a lot of times people just want to belong and they just want to feel important. Why, if that's true, what do you think that kid was trying to do when he lied about reading a book that you had read? And then my son was like, oh, well, maybe he was just trying to feel like he belonged. Right. And I was like, yes, that's exactly what he was trying to do. And so I think if we frame some of that with our kids too, it can help, at least for me, it helps me not get as frustrated as a parent because if I think, okay, my children are doing this because they want to feel like they belong and they want to feel like they are significant, that can change my approach and help give me a little bit more patience. Um, okay, positive discipline is really focused on being very proactive. So it's like you do a lot of this stuff so that they don't misbehave. Because the idea is that actually misbehavior from our children, they just have a mistaken idea of how to get belonging and significance. And you can reframe that for them like, hey, that's not the way to get belonging and significance. This is the way to get belonging and significance. And you can do a lot of things proactively so you actually have fewer fights, you have fewer conflicts, you have fewer problems with your kids. So positive discipline really focuses on the proactive piece, but then it also gives you some responsive strategies as well for those moments when they do, make mistakes and mess up. Um,
Yeah,
so
I think there's a lot of there's often power struggles. And that maybe is that desire to be significant by having power. And if you go back to our discussion on boundaries, children who have been given too much power or have been treated like a peer got a taste of power and they want to keep it. But it's never too late. I remember my neighbor had a child who literally was running the show years ago. 6-year-old was the boss of the house, and it was very effective. And the pediatrician said, "It's not too late. You need to take that back." And it's not too late. It's not even too late if you have a teen that you feel is kind of running the show in your house. Um, the children don't need to be in control. They need to feel significant, but they don't need to feel in control.
yeah. And some of the things that positive discipline suggests for proactive measures that you can do to kind of help fill your kids' belonging in significant cups are one is curiosity questions, where instead, like if your child comes to you and says, I'm having an issue with somebody at school, or my brother punched me, or I don't like that snack, right? Whatever it is, all the things that you're hearing every day from your children, right? I don't want to do my homework. Instead of you being the problem solver, you help them feel like they have significance by asking them, well, like, yeah, that feels like a problem. What do you think you should do? And I love that because that's also just building resilience and problem solving. Like there's so many good things that come from that question.
And that can happen in family meetings. So positive discipline in schools looks like class meetings. Many teachers in their morning meeting and sometimes in their afternoon closed down meetings are following positive discipline by giving everybody a voice. If the family meetings, like when I was a little girl, where dad was just belting out stuff, that's not what it is. Family meetings can be really great. I love Friday nights. You get pizza, you have a fun little game, and you have a meeting, and you throw out there maybe something that's an issue. Maybe you're going to school, getting off to school late and arriving late, and you want to kind of put that issue out there. So fun to hear what the children think could be the solution and look them in the eye, give them attention, say yes, and rather than yes, but, and give them a voice. It'll be so fun. And my kids roar with laughter about the family meetings that we had when they were little. They roar with laughter, but they still remember them, and they were fun times.
We actually have started doing family meetings and they're super helpful because if we have a problem, we can say, hey, why don't you go write it on the family meeting agenda? And then we problem solve together. And it's a really nice way, again, to just be proactive and help kids feel like their voice matters. They have input and they belong, right? And again, we're just filling that significance and belonging cup. A couple other things. Chores are such a great way to build significance, especially if they're things that have to get done for the family. Um, that if the kid doesn't, it's just not going to get done. Like you don't do it for them, right? And that builds that sense of significance. Like if I'm not there, somebody, like something is not going to be right. And so, Becky, do you have any chores that you had your kids do at home?
Yeah, we called it for the good of the order. That was my husband's language. We're doing it for the good of the order. But they had to feed the dog, they had to do the dishes, they had to make their beds. I love what Judith is saying, right? It's very similar to the good of the order. Thank you, Judith, right? Family responsibilities. And if they feel like they're contributing, then they have that sense of, oh, I can make things happen. I'm capable. My son Charlie ended up doing the most chores because he was around the longest. He was the baby. And when he got to his fraternity, I think I've told you this, he signed up for the bathroom cleaning duty. And I'm like, what? Why did you do that? Sounds horrible. He said, well, I'm really good at it, Mom.
Right? I mean, don't we want our kids to be good at that? Yes. And that takes practice.
Vacuuming. They love vacuuming, pushing that thing around.
Right? I mean, the Swiffer, somebody told me like even toddlers love the little like Swiffer and then, do, right? It's like from all ages. There's things that, even teenagers, hey, can you run to the grocery store for me? I forgot something. I need this. Can you help me? And then I think telling your kids, right? I love you. You matter to me. Giving them hugs, filling up that belonging cup, not having our phones on when we're talking to them, right? Giving them our full attention. All these things are part of the positive discipline way. And
Yeah.
so,
They
yeah,
need to belong without performing. They
exactly.
belong. They belong because they're in the family. They don't belong because they did something good.
That's right. That is exactly right. And I think that's huge, particularly in high achieving schools.
Mm.
We have a real um, issue with kids wanting to perform because they're always performing. They're performing in schools, they're performing in extracurriculars, and being able to have them just be able to be and belong and be significant no matter how they perform. You're exactly right, Becky. That's huge. Um, so these next strategies are for those moments when you've been proactive, you've done all the good stuff, but we are human and fallible, and our kids sometimes, they make mistakes, they mess up, they say something horrible, or they have a disrespectful tone, or they don't clean up their room when you've asked them to. And one of the principles that really helps maintain that level of belonging and significance while also maintaining your authority as a parent is connect and then correct. And so what this looks like, you first, when your child has done something wrong, you connect with them. Here's a couple examples. I notice you seem upset, right? Or even I name the emotion, right? Or would you like a hug? That one works like 90% of the time in my family, right? It can be hard to feel disappointed, mad, sad, fill in the blank. You mean so much to me. Connect first and then do your correction, right? I
Yeah.
It can be hard to feel disappointed. The time for playing video games is up. Thanks for putting it away. What do you need to do next to be prepared for bed?
Yeah. The Dr. Becky podcast, Good Inside, she always emphasizes not to push a child away who is upset, which is what I always did. I always said, go to your room and go to their room with them. If you have a deep feeling kid, which my firstborn was a deep feeler, they need you. So that hug is really important. So when they're having a meltdown or they're misbehaving, the worst thing to do is isolate them. And it seems counterintuitive. I grew up in a family where you were sent to your room, and that's what I did. But I think the better advice is, do you need a hug? And just sit there. Don't lecture. I was a big lecturer. Don't lecture. Just sit there quietly and affirm their belonging with your presence.
I will add to that though, Becky, when your kids are having a temper tantrum, and in our house, that's like a once a day thing. There are sort of levels of moments where you go, okay, I want to connect with you. A lot of times they don't want to hug, right?
Yeah.
I do my connecting and I say, hey, would you like a hug? I appreciate that you feel upset. And this emotion is too much for this space right now. When you are ready to come back and connect and talk about it, we can, but why don't you go to a space where you can cool down? And they have something called the positive timeout, which is not in here, but it's the exact same thing, right? It's like a place where they can go to regulate their emotions. They're not being punished or sent away because they have feelings. They're going to a place where they can chill down. And for me, sometimes I put myself in positive timeout. I'm like, I'm going for a walk.
Yeah, timeout for parents is good. Um, I will be doing a session shortly on tantrums and meltdowns. And I was at school yesterday and I said, are tantrums and meltdowns really something we're only seeing with the itty bitties? And a person to be unnamed said, my fifth grader just had the largest meltdown over a pair of sneakers this morning. So everybody's kid has meltdowns. So we will be talking about meltdowns in a couple weeks. So stay tuned for that.
I mean, just talk about middle schoolers, right? Like that's like middle school meltdowns. Okay, so how do you do the connecting correct? The thing to remember is to be kind and firm at the same time, right? So again, it's the I'm kind, I'm connecting with you. It can be hard to stay calm when your brother is bothering you. And this is the magic word, and we don't hit in this family, right? Like end of story. There are I love you and there are standards of behavior or whatever it is, right? I know it can be really tough to feel like you're missing your extracurriculars, and I will take you when your room is clean, right? So, does anybody, y'all can throw in the chat some ideas for kind and firm that you could use, like either in your morning routine or at dinner table or, places that are hard. If y'all have any ideas, throw them in the chat. Becky, do you have some kind and
Well,
firm?
the parent yesterday said the parent yesterday knew all about kind and firm and said, I am so sorry. I know you've changed your mind on those sneakers that we bought this weekend, but those are your sneakers and you have PE today. So there was no accommodating. I see a ton of parents accommodating. Don't worry, we'll buy you a new pair. You can save those for weekends or whatever. We'll get you the pair you want. Don't worry. I wouldn't go in that direction. I really wouldn't. They need to learn how to get over disappointment. You've had buyer's remorse before, right? They need to practice getting over it, whatever it is.
Right? I think that's something that's so huge. And Judith wrote in the chat, right? It's like really hard in the moment. And so, but for me, what really helps is just remember the and, right? Connect and then correct. And if you say that and, that's kind of that crucial piece. You can say something to connect with them and what's your standard.
Yeah.
And that really helps.
Responding to one of the comments is that I always knew what I was supposed to do an hour later. But when my oldest was in preschool, the teacher said to me, she presses every button you have. And I had to learn. They said, say to her, I know you're going to have fun. I'll be back at noon. That was preschool. And eventually that same thing, I had to have my mantra, you all know it, be the adult. And that had to be my mantra to remind me. It was like my trigger to not engage, even though my buttons were just pressed, to be the adult and say something adult-like, because it wasn't my first instinct.
Right? And whether it's like dinner table battles, like they don't want to eat the green peas and you really want them to, and you're like, I know that you don't like these vegetables, and you may not have dessert until your plate is clean, or whatever your family thing is, right? Or until you've had two bites, or until you've eaten a healthy dinner, whatever it is, right? But yeah, I do think this helps you not abdicate, and also it helps you not to be a jerk.
But
Which for me, on that, I'm usually on that other end of the spectrum.
I don't know if this is an older version perhaps, but they give the example from the movie Kramer versus Kramer,
I don't know.
where the little kid spills all over the dad's project that's due, and the dad gets really angry, and the kid says, "I hate you," and the dad says, "I hate you too, you little," right? Everybody's been there. Everybody's been there where all of a sudden you're eight, just like you're a little person and you're going head to head, eye to eye with that person. First of all, they're all resilient. We've all messed up. You can start over tomorrow. But try to get yourself a mantra. Mine was be the adult.
Well, and Becky, that segues so well into this next tool. And this is something I laugh. I'm like, it's actually more of a tool for me than it is for my kids, but I'm trying to teach my kids to use it, particularly when they have sibling fights. But it's just the phrase, I feel because, and I wish. Because sometimes if we can get our kids to name the emotion, a lot of times that helps them regulate it. And so, right, it's like, I feel mad because you stole my snack and I wish I had some goldfish right now. Just being able to give them the words, or even a teenager saying, like, I feel frustrated because I don't like the limits you have on me and I wish I could stay out after curfew. That promotes conversation, right? And it looks for problem solving. And then I can, as a adult, say, I feel disrespected because you snuck out last night and I wish that I could trust you. Right?
We
Whether it's like a little kid or a big kid.
So we always taught this to the very littles in pre-first and first grade in the form of bugs and wishes. So I would go around with this big puppet, like grasshopper thing, and a magic wand, and we would say, "It bugs me when you steal my snack." And then we'd go with the magic wand, and I wish you would eat your own snack and leave mine alone, right? So it's that's for the littles. It's not nice language when you're 10. It's better to go to the I feel statements when they're 10. But when they're 5, 6, 7, the trick is getting it on their tongue, right? Just like us, children don't react with the right words at the beginning. They're being reactive. But if it bugs me when gets on the tip of their tongue, then what they're really doing is drawing attention to how they feel inside. They're increasing their own emotional literacy and they're learning to express it based on what they're feeling, not pointing a finger at the other. So it bugs me when you kick me, or bugs me when you cut me in the line in the cafeteria. I wish you would stand nicely like everyone else.
And I think, too, one other tip I learned about this is when your kids learn and they start using this framework, one great tool as a parent is just to actually say back to them with like a open heart what you heard them say. So if Becky's really mad at me and she's like, I feel mad at you because, you stole my snack and I wish you didn't eat the last goldfish. I can say, you feel so mad at me because I took your goldfish and you want some more.
Yeah.
Right. And what's really interesting is it's really proven that again, we go back to belonging and significance.
Yes. Yes.
You are saying to the person, I heard you. You belong. As Becky said, I see you.
That's exactly right. They really need to be recognized. Be really careful because one of mine was like, that sounds like psychobabble to me. When they get older, right? They catch you on that. So it's better to, I know you're upset,
Yeah.
rather than, oh, I've noticed that you mine sniff that out right away.
Mine are still too young to know that we're trying to manipulate them. Okay, so this last thing, real quick, we're not going to have time to go through it all, but if you Google mistaken goals,
Mhm.
this chart is incredibly helpful. And I kind of blew it up on each slide, so I'll just briefly show you what it looks like. A lot of times we think about, okay, the child, we talked about how misbehavior is behavior that they're trying to get belonging and significance, but they don't realize that that's not going to get them that, right? So it's like they're still trying to get belonging and significance. They're just going about it in a bad way. And so this chart helps you go through if you, and I like to start with number two, like if I feel annoyed or irritated or worried or guilty, and I start reminding, like, don't forget to get your shoes, don't forget to get your shoes, don't forget to put on your shoes. And the child's response is maybe they start to go get their shoes, but then they forget or they stop doing it, right? There's a belief that it's like, I belong only when I'm getting special service. They want attention, right? They want that belonging. And the way that we can actually make it worse is this kind of thing. Like, this is that I feel guilty. If you aren't happy, I'll buy you a new pair of shoes. And the messages that our kids are really trying to tell us are notice me, involve me. And then it gives you some ideas of things you can do as a parent to help make this behavior become productive behavior. So there's four different charts. I'll just briefly show them. One is undue attention. One is, Becky, we talked about this, misguided power. One is revenge, right? To get even. Again, that's sort of that significance piece, and also sometimes belonging. And then there's assumed inadequacy, right? Where I'm not even going to do this well. So, Becky, have you ever used these? Have these been helpful for you?
Yeah, I think there's one that they've left out in my mind, and that is the child who's just emotionally dysregulated, the deeply feeling child who feels everything big, reacts to everything big, and is really, I never realized that one of my children had anxiety and was causing a fuss in the morning and disrupting the whole family because of that anxiety about going to school. I never knew that. And that wasn't any, that was not assumed inadequacy. It wasn't a power struggle. It really wasn't anything except for that anxiety showing up in the morning because school was about to happen. And I treated it like it needed a consequence. And I think that going back to the belonging and significance, see your child, think about it later after you drop them off at school. If it was a rough morning, go over it in your mind and think, is there something I don't know? Was there a test coming up, or is there a friendship problem? Is there a fear of, such and such? So just if you have a deeply feeling kid, they wear it on their shoulder, it all comes out. It's not really on that chart, but it's something that we need to pay attention to as parents.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, while Becky is a doctor, we are not those kind of doctors. Just a quick disclaimer, as per usual. But if you want more, you guys, Becky is an amazing parent coach. She effectively coaches me a lot. She coaches all of us. And then you can obviously share, follow everything on Instagram, social, Facebook, you name it. Next up, Becky is going to be doing 1, 2, 3 magic.
1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3 magic is an old book that actually keeps growing because there's one for teens. But there's actually a Westminster grad who I know, successful doctor in San Francisco, who has two middle schoolers and an elementary schooler and has really used 1, 2, 3 magic for their family from the beginning. I'm having a phone call with her this week to kind of get the lowdown I've been reading it this summer, and I think even if you don't jump in with 2 feet to this methodology, which is basically three strikes, you're out, um, it's got some really good things that align with positive discipline. So come back next week and hear about some magic.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. And again, don't forget, we got the Positive Discipline for Moms Summit coming up in November, and you can find out more about that on my website if you're interested. Thanks so much.
All
Talk
right.
to y'all soon.
Thanks for
Thanks,
coming.
guys.
Bye.